I've got a tickle in my throat, so I have a throat lozenge in here from the vestiges of the cold that I've had. I just can't shake it. Of course, the schedules we keep, as everybody knows that's here, it's tough to get rest. And then we've been in session for the last couple of weeks. Had a busy time with it, but it's nice to be here this morning and be with some like-minded folks that understand our foundation and where we are today and where we should be. And my only complaint this morning is I have to follow Rick's account. That's like the worst guy to follow in the whole legislature. And that's what you did to me. So maybe if I visit your group again, you'll treat me a little nicer than that. But he always has just a very penetrating, impactful message. And I got that this morning. So that was a great setup. And one of the things I wanted to start with today, which is where do you think we are today? Where we are now? We've heard a lot about our heritage. We understand the age group that's here today. We don't have any real youngsters here this morning, but what we've seen in our lifetimes, the changes that we've seen happen since we were younger, since we were in school, things that have happened there and in our government, and just general societal changes about how things are presented now. I think, and maybe you'll agree with me, that we're on the edge of living in a lawless nation. A friend of mine, Carl Mesper from the House, you folks know, said it's a constitutional crisis right now. And it starts at the top. We talk about prayer, we talk about setting an example for our nation, as a lot of presidents have. Look at the example that Barack Obama sets for our nation. I mean, when he speaks out for same-sex marriage, think of that one issue alone. When he said he didn't support it, we didn't hear as much about it. And you have the radical homosexual organizations that are out there pushing their agenda, and they're not going to go away. And you have pockets of disruption around the country here and there. But generally speaking, we could contain where that legal effort was going and the movements that were happening around the state. Keep in mind that 31 states have put it on where it's been on the ballot. In every case where it's been on the ballot, the people said, we don't want that in our state. We don't want same-sex marriage to be a legal document in our state. In every state in America. You hear about this trend and how things are shifting. The people are saying, they don't want this. Everywhere. Even in California. I mean, yeah. California. But then the president, this slick trick they did, I think, where the vice president came out, supposedly made a gaffe and said that he supported this. And, oh, that's not good because the president doesn't support it. And then immediately after that, the president said, well, I support it too. So then it was probably this engineered trickery that goes on sometimes from that group. And then it became front page news. And now it's okay for everybody because it's pop culture now. It's accepted. It's accepted from the government, and it's always been accepted by some of the people involved in pop culture. But now it's more prominent. It's better to say that. It's easier to say that. We have an Attorney General, when I talk about lawless, Eric Holder from the top, that's telling people when he meets with Attorney Generals from around the country, the state Attorney Generals, that it's okay to ignore the law if you personally believe that it's unconstitutional. And he just did that again a few weeks ago. They had a conference of Attorney Generals, and that's what he told them. He was the speaker and told them it's okay. So what do we have in Pennsylvania? We have Kathleen Kane, who said, I'm not going to, my role as an Attorney General, constitutionally, is to defend the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We're sued, I have to handle that. So we get sued on voter ID. And I don't like voter ID. I'm not going to support that. So I'm not going to defend the state on voter ID. That's some kind of right-wing conspiracy thing. I'm not going to do it. She's had several instances where she's just flatly decided that she's not going to do her job. I'll get to the most recent one. every minute. But same-sex marriage thing. You have Eric Holder, you have the president, you have Kathleen Kane saying she's not going to defend all laws on same-sex marriage. Then you have a register of wills in Montgomery County that says, hey, there's no rules. Nobody's going to do anything to me. I think this is a good idea, personally. So I'm going to go ahead and issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples that come in the courthouse. And what happened to him? Nothing. Zero. What happened to those people who got the licenses that got married? Nothing. Zero. There's no penalties. There's no laws prohibiting. I mean, we have laws on the books that prohibit these things. But if you don't enforce them, and you have the people from the top on down saying it's okay, go ahead and ignore everything. There's not going to be any penalty for you if you choose to do things like that. But it just happens. It just unfolds. I mean, you know, how are we supposed to exist as a society and a structure when there's no enforcement of laws we have in the books? And you have the chief law enforcement officers of the state and of our nation telling people to ignore laws based on their own personal preferences. I mean, that's a tough thing for me to understand. But that's where we are today in 5 or 6 quick years of an Obama administration. We've gone from being a very structured society, and not everybody liked everything, but you had rules in place, to a lawless society where if you don't feel like doing something, it's okay. Just ignore it. You think back to the Magna Carta, 1215 is when the Magna Carta was passed. Was signed by King of England. That gave structure to every document that we've had since. That holds the government accountable to the people and makes sure that no man is above the law. And from that, all of our documents, from William Penn up through, were based on this Magna Carta document. And it worked up until Barack Obama was elected. We'll see if we can turn that around. Think of the executive orders that he's put in place. And he freely tells people, if the Congress doesn't act, I'm going to do it myself. No structure, no rules, just, I personally think it's a good idea. So I'm going to take my pen, I'm going to make a new rule, and it's going to be the law of the land. Period. Think of the program, I saw a book on this. It was, I can't remember the exact title, but something like The Policy That Cannot Fail. It was about Obamacare. I thought it was a great title. Because at first I thought I was defending Obamacare, but it wasn't. It was critical of Obamacare. But it was simply stating the truth that it is not allowed to fail. It should have failed over and over and over again, but every time there's a deadline, there's something that needs to meet the current law that's in effect, that was passed by the Congress. That any Republican votes in the way ahead. It was passed by the Congress. Barack Obama changed his rule. He won't allow it to fail. That'd be nice if we could do that. We just, nobody does it. And our side doesn't think about those things. We don't think that, well, we're going to change the rules, we're going to break the rules. We're going to make up our own rules. We're rules people. We operate by rules. We look at the Bible, we try to observe the Ten Commandments, starts from there. That's how we live our lives. If you come about that from a whole different angle, you don't care about rules like that, then you can do whatever you want, and then you can try to justify it later. And that's what these folks do, and this is justification of from the highest order in our land, just making things up as they go along. And then we have another very sad example of ignoring rules, and that was the Kermit Gosnell situation in Philadelphia, the abortion clinic, where starting with Edna and Dow, they decided not to inspect the abortion clinic. And it's on the books, the law's on the books, and he was back with it, but just ignored it. And Tom Ridge, who was pro-abortion governor, Republican, he decided he was going to continue that same directive from the former governor and ignore these abortion clinics, allow these things to operate. They had reports of this guy. They had a woman die years ago there. Another lady died. And of course, these babies He was such a bad physician, such a bad abortionist, that he couldn't do that correctly. He couldn't get these abortions to happen the way they should with that procedure. So he would induce labor, have these babies born alive, and then take scissors and snip their spinal cords in the back of the neck and kill them while they were there on the table next to the mother. Now, that's illegal. Went on forever, years and years. We held a hearing down there. The local government committee held a hearing. People would say, why did the local government committee have a hearing? Because it was interesting to me that on top of the state laws that he broke from the health department and Department of Welfare, he also broke every local ordinance there was. This guy was given the red carpet treatment by the city of Philadelphia. He didn't pay his taxes. He hired people that were underage. He didn't follow medical waste rules. He broke fire codes. He did everything. Everything you could think of in that clinic. And I've seen that clinic. He broke every rule. And everybody left him alone because he was an abortion clinic in Philadelphia. Now, there's many, many examples of what we've done and how far we're swinging when we ignore the laws that we've established in this country. And what I was going to mention a minute ago, that's been in the news recently, speaking of Attorney General Kane, is a sting operation in Philadelphia. We had 4 House members. We had members of City Council in Philadelphia that were caught on video. Over 100 videos of these people taking cash in exchange for voting a certain way or doing something as a personal favor to this supposed lobbyist. It was a phony lobbyist. It was somebody in the DG's office had used in this case. And then when she became elected, apparently, we think, she didn't think it was politically wise for her to go after Democrat House members and Democrats in Philadelphia. So she just killed the whole investigation quietly and didn't prosecute anybody. Well, then it leaked out that all the evidence was there. And then she said that the federal government was killing him. Then it came out that, well, the federal government didn't kill him. She got it back. She asked for the case back from the federal government. The federal government had not finished a review of the case yet. And she was claiming that they had killed it, decided there wasn't appropriate evidence, enough evidence, and then it came out that, well, we didn't make that determination yet. You asked for the case back. We gave it to you. You killed it. So it's still playing out. We'll see what happens as this is all fully disclosed. But more evidence where people are making personal decisions to just ignore the law when it suits their own purposes. and again, we see this effect happening because of the example that's being set. Think of what's happening with our kids today, what they see from pop culture, from the government, from their schools, from everything. They have probably the worst example we could set for these young minds. When we try to teach them at home that there's rules, you got to do a good job, you got to work hard, you got to get to church. We teach them the scripture, we teach them the foundations of a Christian life, and then they see the opposite example when they go out into society. In fact, they're ridiculed by many people, and they're told, as Rick had mentioned, we try to get things like we get the national motto in school, and there's pushback on that. So they're confused when you don't know. People are telling you, well, that's wrong, you can't do things like that. So my dad said, it's okay. Well, your dad doesn't know. There's a lot of issues here. He doesn't understand. That's the kind of message we get for our young people today. One of the most troublesome things, and I was asked about as soon as I got in the door today, is Senate Bill and House Bill 300. Those are the bills, as you folks probably all know, that would give special privileges to homosexual, that broad range of transgender, transsexual, homosexual people, and treat them in a protected class so they can't be discriminated against. Now, you know, on the face of that, that's an easy thing to defend. You're in school, or you're in the floor of the House or the Senate. You want to talk about, well, let's just be nice to everybody. Why should we discriminate against people? We should try to be fair. They shouldn't be treated any differently. And that's true to a point. But this elevates them to a special protected class. It puts in the law that they're considered to be protected exactly like a religious protection would be for somebody, or a race protection would be for somebody. But it forces people, the bottom line of it is, the legislation in reverse aspect here, discriminates against the Christian community. Because it forces us then to accept a behavior that we don't believe is correct, and puts us in a situation, and I'll give you a few real-world examples. You've probably heard some of these on the news. A baker that has a bakery that's forced, he's Christian, he's forced to do a cake for same-sex marriage. He chooses not to, but he gets sued. Think of the adoptions that happen. Catholic Social Services does a lot of adoption work, and I've already heard from them back in the Altoona area. They'll close. I mean, they'll just simply close. That's what happens in the states where they pass these rules. It shuts out these people because then they have to give up their personal religious beliefs. In that case, that is what the structure of the agency is, and they won't do adoptions for same-sex couples. They refuse to do them. So they'll close their business instead of doing that. There was a Methodist, I believe it was a Methodist church camp in New Jersey. They refused to allow the camp to be used for a wedding, and they went after their nonprofit status. Think of some of these examples. It would force a Christian summer camp for girls to employ female counselors who identify as men. You ever been to one of these colleges where they have these restrooms now that different sexes can go in the same restroom at the same time? Because depending on what you feel like you are that day, you're a man or a woman or whatever, and you can go in there. I mean, I'll tell you, again, looking back at where we were a few years ago and where we are today, it's a very sad situation. How would you like to be in a duplex, which a lot of people, particularly as they get older, maybe want to downsize and they get a duplex and they think I can have rental income on the other side of my house and have a pretty good arrangement here. And then you're forced to rent to a same-sex couple. You may not want to. I mean, it takes all your decision-making away from you. Now, it's funny how tolerance works with these folks. Everybody has to be tolerant of them, but they are absolutely intolerant of everybody else in our society. And we've got to stand up on this bill. I don't think this bill's going to go anywhere. This is another issue that just isn't going to go away. And until we get a president that's going to speak out against it, when we get some people in Pennsylvania that are going to speak out against it, and very, very sadly, our governor didn't change his mind on this issue. I couldn't believe that. But it's an election year. He's getting bad advice. I mean, I'll blame it on that. He should have the guts to stand up to those folks. But there's no excuse for it. But that's a very sad commentary on him. So we're surrounded in large part in Harrisburg by a culture of corruption. And it's continued. I ran talking about that phrase 8 years ago against an incumbent. And we've made some strides. And I really credit the new people that are coming into the legislature. You guys disagree with me if I'm wrong. But the new people are much different than the old-timers that are there. Not that they're bad people, but they've done things a certain way, and they're very resistant to change. And the newer people coming in saying, we're not going to take all the perks. We're not going to do things that same way. And it's just a different environment with different members now. There are quite a few newer people coming in, and the public is waking up and saying, we want change. We don't want more of the same. So that's important to continue that trend. But we still have, as we've just seen, these 4 House members involved in a sting operation. And in the Senate, we're never exempt from these problems either. We just had a Senator, Leanna Washington from Philadelphia, get charged with all sorts of violations using her office for campaign purposes. I mean, that's a first. I don't know when people are going to learn. I mean, don't do that, We have lots of people in jail for that, but they just keep doing it. I don't know why you don't get that message, but she apparently missed that those days. She does miss a lot of days, so maybe she missed it when that stuff all happens. It's funny, since she's been charged, she's been there almost every day. She sits right next to me on the floor, but that's an interesting situation too. And we still have lots of people in both chambers that are in a lot of trouble. And then we react and we do the things we do best. There's always this knee-jerk reaction when something happens. So it's the first thing we do after this latest house scandal, we do a gift ban. No more cash gifts, can't do that anymore. Which was fine with me. I mean, I don't know anybody who would get a cash gift. I mean, the only reason you get a cash gift, I would think, would be doing something illegal. So you shouldn't do that anyway. I mean, who's going to walk up to you with a handful of cash and say, "Hey, John, I just wanted to give you a handful of cash"? It just doesn't happen. They're going to say, I have a handful of cash here, but if you do this for me, I'll give it to you. Well, that's when you get into trouble. If they just actually, under the law, if they just gave you the cash right now, you'd be okay. But if you do something in exchange for that money, that's illegal. And that's what these people were. Specifically, through this taping, they were specifically told what they needed to do for the cash. They agreed to do it. They took the money and so on. But we do that. But we've got this broad array of trips and Super Bowl games, Pebble Beach golf outings, and all sorts of stuff that people do. And that stuff, I think we're going to address now too, because now's the time to get to all those things and cut back on that stuff and cut back a lot of this influence that comes in those respects. But I wanted to, my last kind of section here to close out on some things that you folks can keep an eye on and you can do in a very real way to help in our state to get things better, in better stead and back on track. The first thing, and it's a simple, straightforward thing, and I know you get asked about it all the time, is to pray. You need to pray for me, for Rick, for the members of the General Assembly. When I get in, you get in a lot of places, a lot of church outings and places I speak, and people ask me, "What do you want me to pray for? Give me something you want me to pray for that would help you." And sometimes I have something on my heart that's specific, something we're working on, or an issue that just came up, and I think about that. But most of the time, I ask for 3 things: for wisdom, courage, and strength. For the wisdom to know what to do, that we're doing the right thing, myself and everybody else. For the courage to do the right thing, because you can know in your heart, you can be sitting there at one of these tables and say, I know what I need to do, but I'm not standing up in front of this crowd. I mean, this caucus is not going to go for this. And leadership's mad at me to start with, and I'm not going to say a single word today because that's going to push somebody over the edge, so I'm not going to stand up. But you've got to have the courage to take a stand, and sometimes it's not popular. And then the strength to continue to do the right thing. We get worn out, we get tired, we get physically tired, and we get emotionally tired. We get tired sometimes of fighting that battle. Just give me a break. I'm going to be here tomorrow, but tomorrow I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to just kind of cool down and relax and just kind of coast through the day. I mean, you need to have that strength to continue that fight day after day after day. So please keep that in mind for everybody there. And for the leaders everywhere. In your community, in your church, in this group, everywhere. People need bolstering that they can continue to do the right thing. One of the groups, I know some of the other people here have been part of these programs. We had a Pennsylvania Pastors Network, did a series of breakfasts around the state, and got pastors together, which I thought was a really neat thing, and it ties in with what Rick's comments were. Trying to get back to the partnership that was part of this country when it was being established. The pastors at that time, they were the backbone of the revolution. Am I right, Rick?
Yes.
I mean, these guys that were on the front line in Congress and making the decisions in Philadelphia, they got the message loud and clear at home, in their churches, and the communities were with them. Religious freedom was not just written down on a piece of paper in some, theoretical concept that these folks learned about in school. This was the primary concern that they had when they were breaking away from England. They wanted to set up, to have the ability in the United States to have religious freedom here. And the preachers understood that, and they understood everything that went with it. And they gave the backbone to these guys by preaching that word at home and making sure that the community understood the difference between right and wrong and what they were trying to do. And we've lost that now. This separation of church and state business that they've been so successful at poisoning our society with has damaged this partnership that we've had. We really don't have much of a partnership anymore, but we need that. We need to make sure that the pastors are communicating with the government leaders, and the government leaders communicating with the pastors, and we work commensurately so that we're sharing the same message, and we're trying to all do the right thing for our communities. And we should all be trying to do the right thing for the folks back home. It shouldn't be that difficult. But that includes the biblical foundation that we have in this country. So if you fall from that biblical foundation, then I can see where the partnership's not going to work. But if you have a biblical foundation in your church, and you're part of that, and you're taking that message and working with that message in government, you should work together to make sure that everybody is hearing that and working together in that directive. You need to discern. I heard a message about a year or so ago on discernment. It was really an interesting message. And that ability to make those judgments using your scriptural knowledge between what's right and what's wrong. Again, we have a pop culture situation. We hear bad messaging all the time. Hundreds, if not thousands of times a day. All you have to do is billboards, magazines, listen to the radio, whatever. I mean, I can't drive down back and forth here without seeing these gentleman clubs, billboards, and all sorts of stuff that's out there. I mean, that's just part of what you see every day. But you've got to have the ability in your head to think through these things and make sure you're making the right decisions. And they get a little more complicated than that, but there's a lot of finer decisions that you need to make. And you need to think through those, make sure you're doing it, and you're doing it for the right reasons. And you've got to be able to trust organizations that don't. You've got to have that discernment too across the board, even with organizations and things that you're looking at. I tell you one, and I'll tell you frankly this morning that I don't have any time for is Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation. When I ran for Senate, Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, and I have been a very active pro-lifer for decades. Been to Washington many times to March for Life. We have marches back in our area. I've been to those for a long time, probably 20 years. All sorts of things that I've done. And I was running against a guy. It was the poster boy for the pro-abortion side. When we passed the Pennsylvania Abortion Control Act, he was standing with Molly Yard and campaigning across the state against the Pennsylvania Abortion Control Act. And then when he ran for re-election, whenever I ran against him, Pro-Life Federation said he did like a 10-question situation, and it says on there, if you don't answer all these right, here's how you answer them. If you don't answer them right, then we're not going to support you. So he answers them right. And they said, we changed his heart. I said, are you kidding me? I mean, you're going to, on the strength of that, you're going to support this guy? They did a letter to my local paper. They supported him. And that was against me personally, so you get that, and you kind of forgive and forget, and you move on, because you can't hold everybody, forever responsible for things they did in a campaign like that. I find out they're doing this all over the place. State rep races. I know 3 or 4 of these state rep races where you have an absolute solid gold pro-life person running against somebody else that's far on the other side, and if they're an incumbent, they'll back. I talked to one of our national leaders one day, and I don't want to say his name, but you'd all know him. And I had some personal time with him. who's in our area to speak. And I was the guy that got to pick him up at the airport and take him back. So, you know, those are neat times when you get to spend a little one-on-one with somebody like that. And very good Christian. And I talked to him about the National Red Light Group. He said, John, they're concerned about one thing: access. They don't want that door to close. And if there's an incumbent, the chances are good that the incumbent's going to get reelected. So they'll go with the odds, and they'll support somebody like that before they'll support somebody that's really doing the right thing. And I always remember that conversation. So keep that in mind when you're, you know, little old lady next door is going to send $25 to one of these groups to help them out, and they're convinced they're fighting for their values there in Harrisburg. Not all these groups are. And so use that discernment across the board with all sorts of things. And be aware of changes that are happening. We had a federal court decision a couple weeks ago that's going to be huge in Pennsylvania. It was a Middle District Federal Court. It was a suit brought by the general majority super PAC. These super PACs now are changing the face of how politics are done. And the super PAC sued Pennsylvania and said that they're not allowed to take corporate money and union money here in this state. And the court said, we'll let you do that. Unions fund about 3/4 of what they do. And their goal on their website is, we're here to take back state legislatures that have been overrun by Republicans. They spent $6 million last year in New Jersey. And they're expected to spend a lot of money in Pennsylvania this year. If they see a seat where they think the Democrat can win, they're going to come in and spend a lot of money. And these unions, and I talk to rank and file people all the time, that don't understand that they're supporting, with their union dues, Planned Parenthood and all sorts of other organizations. They have no idea. They think that this is going so they can get an extra quarter this year on their salary, or they can get another day off, or whatever. That's a small part of what these unions do. A very small part. They are deeply engaged in political activity across the board. When all that fight was going on in Wisconsin, our teachers union was sending money to Wisconsin. They're sending it to D.C., they're sending it to Wisconsin, they're sending it anywhere where they think that there's going to be any kind of loss for them in any respect. They're spending millions and millions of dollars. And then they have the nerve to say that they're spending just a little bit of that union money. They have PAC money that they collect too, but their union money is used for political activity. I mean, we know that the PSEA, for example, is right across the street from the Capitol. They've got people in the Capitol every day. And those people are making 6 figures plus. And they're over there, they're lobbying. They bring in people, they bus them in, they buy their food, they pay them all sorts of things. We have people coming in, and these unions bring in from out of state that don't even have any interest in Pennsylvania. They pay them to come in, they fly them, they put them up to Hilton, they do all sorts of things with them. So they can come in and be disruptive in the state House and Senate. It's a real problem. But keep an eye on that and know that there's evil forces working within a lot of that effort. Not all union people are bad. I don't mean to say it that way. But there are bad things that are happening with a lot of that money. And it's important for people to understand and discern that their money is not being spent the way they think it's being spent. Thirdly, you folks need to speak out. You need to talk to the legislators, and that's pretty obvious. But and do it effectively. I mean, these form letters we get, and I don't know about anybody else here. I get these form letters. What we do is in my office, once we get a few things and we know they're a form letter, then we just mark. We don't even put the names in. We just say we got 80 of these or 25 of these or whatever. We don't say Joe Smith sent this. He's from Newville. This person sent this. They're from Newburgh. I mean, we don't do that. We just say we got 25 of these. That's it. We don't really care. I mean, there's no impact with these postcards and form letters like that. A personal message, if you get to speak to somebody, that's always the best. Get a group together and see, a reasonable group, like 3-4 people, respected people in the community, people that are concerned about an issue, passionate about it. See if you can get an appointment to sit down and talk. See if you can explain your position on something. That to me is very, very effective. Shoot an email. For me, emails are good. Letters to the editor. I'll tell you, people don't like to get a negative letter to the editor. I can tell you that. That's my opinion anyway. If there's one in any of the papers that affects me, I'm concerned about that. I'll tell you what, maybe I shouldn't say that publicly. I don't know. But that's a good way to get somebody's attention if you do a letter to the editor. And again, if you do it professionally, that makes a lot of difference. If you look like some, wacko, that's going to be not going to help the case. But and then today with all the electronic media, Facebook and all those things, tweeting, all those things, that stuff is important too, because boy, you get a lot of people to read stuff on Facebook. But make an effort to do that, and you'll see a response and you'll see change very often. Because a lot of times people don't understand all the ramifications of things either, and they know if a lot of people back home are concerned, they'll think twice about voting a certain way. And my last point is with this, is don't rule out running yourself for office, for somebody in your family or one of your best friends. I mean, I didn't want to run for the Senate. I got talked into that over almost a year period. Everybody said, you've got to run, you've got name ID. I was a county commissioner. You've got name ID in that area. You've got to run against this guy. I said, well, I don't want to go to Harrisburg, and I'm not going to run. And my wife said, absolutely not. She put her foot down. Well, that didn't work, but I'll tell you, I didn't want to run. Mike Fulmer, who's in the Senate, will tell you, they had another guy all lined up, and that was the plan. And then he didn't want to do it. He backed out. So Fulmer was it. He just said, okay, I'll do it. But, he didn't think he was going to win, and he did. But there's a lot of people that get thrust into these positions. But you don't have to run for Senate or the House. You can run, these party offices are critical. I mean, if we have a good foundation on our county committees, and John Gross is here, I'll tell you, you have to have good people in these county committee positions. You have to have good people in state committee positions. And think of our platform. We have a pro-life platform for the Republican Party. We're always this close from losing that. We got to have good people in there to make sure we're doing the right things with our platform. So please consider that, or a friend, or a colleague, or a family member. Make sure that that's in their thought process. If the opportunity is there, it's the right thing for them. Do it. You'll have a lot of support, and it's a good thing, good experience for you. But we need your help, and we need this partnership that we have between people in office and the folks back home, and the church, and this Christian foundation that we have in this country, because that's what we were established on. And we'll have great blessings in this nation if we continue that. So thank you very much. And